Welcome. It's the last week of the Phoebe Quitlalong. So I'm going to do a video talking about quilt top construction, and I will wait a couple minutes to let people jump in the video. So if you have any questions at any point, So I originally started doing these on Tuesday because my kids are all at school, but that's the only day my husband goes into his office. Otherwise, he works from home. But he's homesick today. He's not, I guess not sick. He took the day off. So he's here and he's very loud and he's yelling at the dogs. Not in an angry way, in a joking way. So if you hear him at any point, that's what that's all about. So we'll talk about quilt top construction today. I have not started constructing my quilt top because I'll show you what I've been working on. I have it on the I've been working on this ruby quilt, which is almost done. I have a few more long seams left there at the bottom, and so I wanted to get that done before I started putting my quilt together, and I wanted to wait to cut my setting triangles until I did this video. So I didn't want to start constructing until I did that. So we'll talk. Let's get started. I'll flip you around. Oh, actually, I don't need to flip it around. I'll just move it down. Okay. So I have here, I have here my blocks potentially. I may end up moving some of them around still. I like to set them up on the wall and kind of leave them for a few days so that I can notice things that maybe aren't immediately obvious. So the things that I'm going to look for are, I want to make sure that I don't have any of the same prints all clumped together in one area, and I want to make sure that I've distributed value throughout the quilt, so I don't have like all of the dark blue prints in one section and all the peach prints in another section. And I just want to get kind of some balance. When you look at the quilt, you want your eyes to want to move around, and the way that you do that is by, distributing things throughout the quilt. So I'm going to start cutting my blocks in a minute. So these are going to be my main body of the quilt blocks that aren't the triangles, because I already set aside the ones to cut. So I definitely think it makes a difference if you ended up with a block that you didn't love the combination of colors or whatever, for whatever reason, put it on the edge, because you won't see it as much on the edge as you will in the middle of the quilt. So I always try to do that, but I also want to make sure that the edges have the same distribution of prints and value and all those things. So I will start cutting those in a minute. I'm going to move this down so that I can show you how I cut my prints, or cut my blocks. Okay. So I'm making a lap size quilt. And for the lap size, for all of the quilts, you only need to cut one block for corner triangles, because your quilt's can only have 4 corners no matter what size your quilt is. So I don't know which one it doesn't really matter. I usually will cut one at a time so that because the top and bottom triangles and the left and right triangles are not cut the same way, just in case my brain isn't working and I start cutting the wrong direction, I can at least use them still. So let me get a ruler. I've got my rotary cutter. I'm just going to use my standard long ruler that I use for most things. And I want to make sure that my block is nice and flat. And I'm going to place it like this instead of putting it like this on top, because maybe it'd be easier to cut this direction if it were kind of tilted like this, but I want to cut both directions without moving it, so I'm gonna set it like this for the corner one. So I'm gonna line up my ruler. I'm gonna close my window. There's lots of noises outside. All right, I got my ruler and I want it to go here. From this corner to this corner. And I want it to not slip while I'm cutting. So this is a really, these creative grid rulers are really great about not slipping. And then I'm gonna cut. Okay, and without moving anything, I'm gonna cut the other diagonal. And when it goes to the diagonal, it should also, well, I guess that's only true on the other direction. See how it also goes through this point right here and this one right here, but there's not. This direction, there's not. Okay, so once I cut these, I may then need to move some things around because these are now my corner blocks. I have committed. So if there is a print that's right next to, sorry, my husband's yelling at the dog. I'm going to bring these over here. Need to get my step stool. Okay. So, and all four of these are not going to be the same. You need to make sure you get the right one in each corner. So, sorry, he's yelling at the dogs. Okay. I can barely reach. All right, I can use that one there. And then I'm going to put this one over here. And then I'll put this one here and that one there. So those are all right. Nothing is too super close to any of those. Oh, you couldn't see the other side. All right, so I've got my corner blocks in place here. All right, let me flip you back up. Let me lower you back down. Now I need to cut. I'm going to do my top and bottom triangles next. So that means I'm going to be cutting this way across the block. I'm going to do one at a time. And now I am going to turn the block this way because it is easier to cut. I only need to cut one diagonal, so. Okay. So I am just making sure I go through I'm in the corners and that my block is nice and smooth. I'm going to make sure I am not going to slip. So I'll put you back up here because now I'm going to make sure my phone stand is not cooperating. All right. So you could put both of these on the top or both of these on the bottom, but just to try to mix things up, I'm going to try for one of each, for each one. I'll put it right here. This design wall is a Fons and Porter design wall. It just goes up with command hooks, and I really like it. I have two of them hanging up. I wish it was about 6 inches longer. It would be perfect, but gets the job done. All right, so I need to cut two more that direction, that same way. So I'm looking at the prints on my quilt, and then I'm looking at the prints in the block and making sure that it's not gonna, I can still move things around, but I would rather not. So if I can avoid having to, you know, it's a house of cards thing. Once you move one thing, the whole thing falls apart and you have to kind of reevaluate. I don't stress too much about having prints that are too close together. See, there's these blue strawberry prints here, here, and here. I probably will move one of those before I start piecing. But some prints are going to be more noticeable than others as far as like being closer together. So the red is, to me, is the most obvious. This red print right here, red. If they were all together, that would be really obvious. The dark blue ones, so, you know, some are going to be more noticeable. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to put one of these here. And one of these down here. That will work. Okay, now I'm going to cut, and I'm now going to just cut the rest since I've now committed. Okay, so I have one more of the top and bottom triangles to cut. So I'll set that aside. Now I'm going to cut the side triangles, and these are now going to go the other direction. So you want them to go from background fabric to background fabric instead of the feature fabrics. And I would not recommend stacking and cutting these, just because there's not very many of them and you'll get better results if you don't. Okay, one. And you don't want to cut these the wrong direction because that would be very annoying. 2. Move that so I don't accidentally cut it again. 4. So now I will put these on my wall, and if you've made it this far into the video, yesterday I posted asking what you guys wanted to do for the next Quiltalong, and lots of people said plaidish, which is what I was hoping you would say, because that's what it's going to be. And tomorrow, if you are an email subscriber, there'll be a surprise in your inbox related to that. So that's all I'm going to say. But if you're not an email subscriber, this would be a good time to become one. But you only get, I'm only sharing that because you made it this far into the video. Alright, so I've got all my top and bottom ones on there. Now I'm going to do the side ones. If you used fat quarters, it's going to be harder to get your fabrics more spread out because you just don't have as much variety. So if you used a jelly roll like I did, or a fat eighths like I did, it'll be a little easier. I'm going to move a couple of these around. No, I'm going to leave that. I wouldn't obsess too much about fabric placement. It'll work out in the end. Everything looks way better once it's been sewn together and quilted. So let me show you a little bit. Let me show you how I will pin my blocks. Let's see, I'll take this. Well, we'll do the corner first. Actually, I'm going to move this one, I think. I'm going to put it... Let's see. No. Kind of gets to the point where it gets a little tricky to find a place. Like if one is... Maybe I'll just leave it. Probably cause more harm than good if I try to move it. Maybe I'll just flip it upside down. No, that's not going to work. It's fine. Okay. Let me show you how I'll do the corners. Here's my corner piece, and here is my block. Okay. Let's put, oh, sorry, that's my finger. So let me pull this back. Sorry, it's kind of rickety. It's getting the job done. Okay, here's my corner block, and here is the block that will go next to it. Well, let me take down all of these. All right, here's the corner of my quilt. Okay, here's the actual corner. Here, let's imagine that this, I'm going to turn it so that you can imagine it as part of the quilt. Here's this corner. Here's the block. It's on point. Here is this top triangle. And here is the side triangle. Okay, so what do you sew on first? The corner or the side? It doesn't matter. I usually will do do these in a row and then add the corner. And you don't need to worry too much about centering the corner over this piece because you're going to make sure first that these seams are lined up. As long as they're lined up, you should get pretty close. So what I will do is I'm going to first sew these two pieces together. And I'm going to pin here at the end. I'm going to pin at this seam intersection. And then I like to pin about every 2 inches. So I'm going to pin right there in between. And then I'm going to pin every 2 inches to the end. And the point of the triangle should end right at the edge of the square. We're kind of cheating by doing it this way. Technically, it should be a 1/4 inch beyond the square. But that would have required us to make a different extra block. I mean, a different type of block, and it just complicates things. So we're doing the cheater method. So it should end right at the edge of the square. So just sew these together like that, and then press, and then add this piece, and then sew the top on. And if you're the parts at the edges seem a little weird, just press them the best you can. Those parts will be in the binding, or they may get just barely trimmed off, so don't worry too much about that. Did anybody have any questions? I don't see any. I will save this to Instagram, and I'll put it on YouTube also. And this is the final video of the Quiltalong. So thanks for joining me.